Sivona vavasate alokolisha vankavekisi hlikani vankavaifo na majambo vankoma so aikona le wasati wa hisa. I don't need another woman. All I need is you, Magdalene. Magdalene. No preciso, no tamuye. Na 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 na. I'm happy to marry you. I'm happy to marry you. Wekata, nitakele kukuchata mina. Nitakele kukuchata. Wekata, inaka hiwena.
Africa World Hour, unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
It's exactly 2100 Central African time. Good evening and a very warm welcome to you. This is Africa World Hour. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective, broadcasting live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Catch us live on SABC Plus app, DSTV Audio Bouquet, channel 802, and OpenView, channel 628. My name is Innocent Semosa, in for Semosa Makwetla.
Nighttime radio, just the way you like it, on Channel Africa, where the night comes alive.
All right, let's look at the Africa World Hour top stories this evening. The Vice President of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Gilles Gabonia, is in Ethiopia this week to speak to the African Union Peace and Security Council and meet regional authorities over the humanitarian crisis on the continent. Gabonia says Africa is grappling with a severe humanitarian crisis, of course, driven by armed conflict, natural disasters, and political instability, placing, of course, millions and leading to a lack of access to essential services. Now, he explained that the RCIC work on the continent and the vital role of international humanitarian law is protecting civilians.
We are working in Africa in over 50 active armed conflicts, and this is an increase of 45% in the number of armed conflicts over the past 5 years. If you wish, about 40% of active armed conflicts in numbers are in Africa. So we see that there are many crises that tend to be forgotten or neglected by the international community, and for us, Africa is a top priority. In this context, the main message, it is absolutely essential to uphold the norms that are enshrined in international humanitarian law.
Now, Britain's King Charles and Pope Leo have attended a prayer service in the St. Stephen's Chapel in a show of religious unity during the monarch's state visit to the Vatican. It's the first time the heads of the Catholic Church and the Church of England have joined in prayer since King Harry VIII broke away from Rome 5,000 years ago. The BBC's Mark Lowe has the details.
This is not, of course, Charles's first visit to the Vatican. He, as Prince of Wales, visited the Holy See 5 times. His mother, as Queen Elizabeth II, came for a state visit in the year 2000. But we understand back then her desire to pray with the then Pope John Paul II, well, those plans were dropped over concerns that would upset factions within the Church of England.
Now, South Africa's education lobby group, Equal Education, says the criminalization of learners is not the answer to bullying. Rather, this follows the suspension of 8 learners at the Milton High School in Cape Town. The learners were allegedly involved in violent bullying incident at the school last week. Now, a video doing the rounds on social media shows how the learner is being assaulted by other boys and objects such as the hockey stick. Equal Education Deputy Secretary General Nontsikelelo Dlulani has called for equal psychosocial support for learners involved in bullying incident in schools.
Beyond the adequate psychosocial support for learners in schools, they must also make sure that they train SGB members and the school safety committees to play their role so that situations and incidents like these do not happen. We do not support the criminalization of learners, but we are saying it must go according to policies, but at the same time make sure that the structures that are there, they must be active in responding to these and providing psychosocial support for the learners in schools and making sure that it does not happen again.
Now, 4 United Nations agencies are appealing for greater international attention to the crisis in Sudan. They say the civil war has devastated basic services in the capital Khartoum and the surrounding areas. The BBC's Barbara Platt-Asher reports.
The joint statement said the situation in active war zones in Darfur and the Kordofan states was deeply concerning, with thousands of children at imminent risk of death due to acute malnutrition. They called for unhindered access to the most affected populations, saying this was still constrained by insecurity, bureaucracy, and logistical challenges. And they warned that funding shortfalls could force them to scale back life-saving interventions.
All right. The United Nations in South Africa, together with the other partners, are today commemorating the United Nations Day 2025. The day is this year marked under the global theme UN80, a legacy of hope, solidarity and action. Celebrating annually on the 24th of October, the United Nations Day commemorates the establishment of the UN in 1945. The day is devoted to promote global unity, international cooperation, and the organization's work in advancing peace, human rights, and sustainable development. The organization's resident coordinator in South Africa, Nelson Mafu.
Born from the ashes of war, the UN was founded on a simple, powerful truth. Humanity is stronger when we stand together in the pursuit of peace, shared prosperity, and human rights. The founding vision, We the Peoples, continues to unite the world for a common purpose. For South Africa, the story is deeply personal. The UN stood as a partner in the struggle against apartheid, committed to safeguarding peace and upholding human rights for all. Today, this promise lives on in every partnership, every policy, and every community where the UN is at work.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
Businesses in South Africa are facing growing security challenges, from theft to property damage. Increasingly, companies are turning to artificial intelligence to promote detection and response while keeping human oversight central. Our reporter, Lebogang Mabange, looks at how this is being applied in practice.
Traditional security measures often struggle to keep up with fast-moving threats. Now, artificial intelligence and connected devices are being used to detect unusual activity, reduce false alarms, and give security teams more time to respond. Stallion Integrated, a security company operating across South Africa, is using artificial intelligence and IoT technologies alongside human guards to detect unusual activity and reduce false alarms. Rian Willemse is the General Manager for Operations and IT.
AI gives us a level of insight and response speed that traditional methods just can't match. It allows us to detect patterns and predict behavior before a crime happens, rather than just reacting afterwards. For example, AI analytics can pick up suspicious activity or abnormal movement across multiple cameras simultaneously, something a person simply can't do as fast or as accurately. In short, it adds a layer of intelligence that strengthens how we prevent, verify, and respond to incidents. At Stellium Technology, we've taken this capability and built it into our own remote monitoring platforms.
Willemse says AI allows security teams to act on real threats more efficiently while reducing time spent on false alarms.
We've seen a major shift in both efficiency and results. The combination of AI and IoT means our control room receives real-time alerts that are far more accurate, which reduces false alarms and speeds up reaction times. We've had multiple cases where early detection through AI directly led to arrests and prevented losses for clients. It's not just about the technology, it's how it's being used in our local context that makes a real difference.
While AI plays a central role, human decision-making remains essential in managing security operations.
It's all about balance. Technology enhances people, it doesn't replace them. The human element is still crucial for decision-making, judgment, and the ability to manage complex or emotional situations. But technology gives those people better tools. AI provides intelligence, automation handles routine tasks, and humans make the critical calls.
According to Willemse, AI has already helped prevent crimes in real time.
Recently, our AI detected suspicious movement at a client site after hours. Our control room verified the threat, dispatched response teams immediately, and 2 suspects were arrested before they could gain access. In another incident, an alarm triggered a rapid response, and another suspect was caught. These cases show that when data and AI-driven tools are applied correctly, they produce immediate, tangible results.
Security analysts say AI-assisted systems are becoming an increasingly important tool for detecting threats and improving response times, while human judgment continues to guide critical decisions. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. When the sun goes down, we don't stop the talk. Channel Africa, the best nighttime radio.
All right, on to this now. Cameroon's internet access has been severely disrupted for a third consecutive day as national-wide protest continues over alleged irregularities in the recent protest election. Now, or should I say presidential elections. Now, activists and opposition supporters accuse the government of deliberately throttling internet connectivity, particularly in the Anglophone regions, to suppress connections of demonstrations and limit the spread of protest footage on social media. Now, digital rights groups have condemned the shutdown as a violation of freedom of expression and access to information, warning that such actions deepen mistrust in already fragile democratic institutions. To talk more on this, we're now joined by Kenneth Mokwetla, Research Fellow at Middle East Africa Research Institute, MEARI. Moeng, thank you so very much for making the time and welcome to Channel Africa.
Good evening to you and to the listeners. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you so much for making the time. Now, what does this latest internet disruption tell us about the Cameroonian government's attitude to essentially towards the digital freedoms and political dissent?
Yeah, it reminds us of many incidents here in Africa. Just before the digital dominance, we go back to the era of independence in the 60s and in the 70s, how many African countries used to treat the press. We know that there was a state control and there was a government interference in the media industries in those respective and individual African countries. and it continues until today during the digital era, where a couple of African countries have been experiencing the I mean the censorship in the access to digital media. We've seen this even in SADC, where in Eswatini the same thing happened, where the government of Eswatini then cited the national security reasons for them to limit access to digital platforms. We've also seen this in Kenya, one of the countries also in East Africa, where the government at the time last year in 2024 during the reject finance bill, when the Gen Z, the younger generation, took to the streets their concerns about the government's efforts or plans to raise money in a way in which they were not, or they felt that they were not adequately consulted, and their internet was disrupted for over 10 days, wherein over 60 people died, lost their lives, and the government took decisions to limit access to the internet. So often when this happens, it's when government wants to hide one of its ways in which they treat the protesters. We've seen how many protesters in Kenya, they just disappeared and many were killed and they were not accounted for. So this is not something new, especially in Africa. So it's continuing to happen. Last year alone, you had about 9 countries which experienced the shutdowns, especially during after the post-elections when there are unrests. So you often see the disruptions of the internet.
And Kenneth, you talk about the freedom of speech. You talk about censorship, and you give examples with the likes of Kenya and Eswatini. Now the question is, how do these shutdowns really affect protesters' safety and us as journalists? Our ability to actually report accurately from the ground.
Yeah, so what happened, just like what happened today when the activists, the journalists, and others went to court to complain about the treatment of government towards its citizens, especially with regards to limiting access to information to the digital information or access to the digital platforms. So we've seen also this happening in Kenya, and we believe that the courts, because at the moment they've only offered the temporary judgment, so we are yet to see the entire or the complete judgment soon regarding the last year's legal action which was taken by journalists and other progressive organizations against the government's decision to limit the access to internet to journalists and to everybody in Kenya. So we believe that such judgments will then will spread beyond Kenya, and it will have influence around Africa, because it is true that we should acknowledge that one of the most critical and fundamental rights should be and should be included in all constitutions of every country, that the access to digital media, it should be made, the digital rights, it should be made necessary clauses in all constitutions of all countries. Because in Sudan alone, so there were people who were complaining about not them being able to access the internet, and when they are not able to access the internet, it means that they can't be able to access their banking apps, and if they can't be able to access their banking apps, then it means that they can't access the food, medicine, and other necessities to survive. So it really does affect the work of the journalists. It does affect the work, the work of the organizers and mobilizers of those protests, because the main aim of the government is to ensure that such mobilization or such protest does not see the light of the day. And it is important that the activists, the politicians, and others be left to organize, because it's one of the rights in many constitutions around the world that the activists should be given the space to do their work. So if the internet is shut down, then you can't expect the work of the activists to continue. It will also be impossible for the journalists to be able to feed the residents or to feed the citizens with the information of what is happening at that time. So it also becomes difficult for us who are not in Cameroon to access news of incidents or the going ons in Cameroon.
Yeah, and I mean, for some people, they feel that there could be a collaboration between telecommunications company or providers and the state in executing these blackouts. But Mokgatle, what's driving the unrest following the election, and how credible are the allegations of fraud and vote manipulation in your view?
Yeah, so in January we had the announcement made by Paul Biya, the current president, the 92-year president, who has been running or ruling Cameroon for over 4 decades. We've had him announcing that he wanted to run for another term. The term in Cameroon is around 7 years, so he wants to become president until he's, I think, 99. And there were unrest again in January in Cameroon, where people were unhappy about his decision because they seem to be tired with his rule, because there's a lot of corruption in Cameroon. A lot of people are unemployed, and a lot of people are facing hunger levels which are increasing on a daily basis. So they want change. Others have only known Paul Biya as the president, and they have never lived under the rule of another different president from Paul Biya. So they want change, and that's why they took to the streets to complain. And I think they suspected that the elections would not be credible. That is why they took their frustrations to the streets in January, and the elections came. And there are strong suspicions that Paul Biya has been protected by the former colonizers of Cameroon, the French government, who are said to be continuing to benefit from the economy of Cameroon through the contracts of oil and military aspects in Cameroon. So that is why they've been able to protect him for such longer time, and they are even willing to protect him today. And there's that person who is more popular now, Chigoroma Bakari Isa, who is being supported by a lot of Cameroonians who are eager to see the change after some 42 years since 1982. And they believe that the elections have been met by a lot of fraud and irregularities, and there have been some fear which have been instilled to or among the voters. So they don't really trust the electoral processes in Cameroon. That is why they took the matter to courts, and the courts, what did they do? They thrown the matter outside the courts, and they are saying that they are going to only release the results on Monday. The problem with this is that all those judges in the court, constitutional court, they've been appointed by Paul Biya himself. So you don't really expect much, because they denied the opposition access to the courts, only saying to them that they are going to release the results, and they trust the results. So we don't know what will happen. But my suspicion is that we are going to see Paul Biya coming back and taking his 8th term.
Indeed, Mokgatle. Just before I let you go, as a parting shot, really, in your view, could this, suppression of online freedom further radicalize opposition movements or deepen divisions between the Francophone and Anglophone communities?
I think it will radicalize the movement. Now you have got the Anglophone who are not really trusting, including your mobile companies as well as the government themselves. So they are on their own, and they are no longer going to wait for mobile companies to feed them or to give them platforms to organize. So they'll have to source new ways of organizing in order to overthrow the government that they deem to be authoritarian. So I don't think it will be difficult for them to organize without or with the limited access to the internet, but it is not going to be impossible to be able to mobilize. It will be difficult to do that, especially given the power of the digital platform. So I think it's very important for them to have access to the internet so that they can be able to organize. We've seen in 2012 during the Arab Spring how
Yeah.
it was so easy for them to organize via Facebook and other platforms. And
Indeed.
the governments at the time, they realized that it was important for them to limit the access of internet to the residents so that it becomes impossible or difficult for them to mobilize or to organize the masses.
Yeah. All right. Kenneth, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate and thanks to the listeners.
Right, there you have it. That conversation brings us to exactly 21:25 Central African Time. That was Kenneth Mokwetla, a researcher fellow at Middle East Africa Research Institute.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
All right, let's look at the story now. 90% of organizations find insider attacks difficult to detect than internal ones. This is one of the key findings contained in the newly released report that looks into the growing cybersecurity risks facing financial services firms across South Africa and the broader African continent. The report was released by global management consulting firm Kenny. Tutongobeni compiled this report.
In recognition of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, Khani's latest report, Securing the Insider Threat Prevention in Financial Services, explores the rising impact of insider threats and outlines a strategic framework for prevention and resilience. As digital transformation accelerates, so too does the complexity and frequency of cyber threats, particularly those originating from within organizations. Joanne Paul, Associate Director at Khani, says this report paints a clear picture on the breaches emanating internally.
Khani report, Securing the Inside, reveals a growing cybersecurity risk in financial services, insider threats. While most firms focus on external attacks, this report highlights how internal actors, whether malicious or accidental, are increasingly responsible for breaches. Nearly 1/3 of breaches come from within, driven by privilege misuse, outdated systems, and human error. Financial services firms are prime targets due to the sensitive data they hold, with insider threats becoming more frequent, harder to detect, and more costly.
Some of the key findings contained in the report include insider threats account for nearly 1/3 of cybersecurity breaches in financial services, and 90% of organizations find insider attacks as difficult or more difficult to detect than external ones, among others, which Paul says the cost of the breach is millions of dollars.
Motivations ranging from financial gain to ideological reasons. Plus, legacy systems increase insider threat by 40%, and the average breach cost in financial services is just over $6 million, significantly higher than other industries. Insider risk isn't just an IT issue, it's a strategic business concern that demands board level attention and cross functional action.
The recommendations in the study suggest that the implanting of insider threat prevention into business strategy and governance organizations can not only protect sensitive data and maintain regulatory compliance, but also build the trust necessary to thrive in an increasingly digital economy. As Paul says, there are 4 strategies that could ensure a strong defense system.
Carney recommends 4 strategic actions to help move from reactive defense to proactive resilience, ensuring insider threats are anticipated, detected, and contained. First, use proactive threat modeling to identify risks early. Second, build a cyber-aware culture where every employee is part of the defense. Third, deploy advanced tech like AI and behavior analytics to detect anomalies. And fourth, create a cyber data vault, a central hub for threat intelligence and response. The message is clear. Insider threats are systemic, and resilience demands both intelligent tools and even more intelligent, vigilant people.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Bene in Johannesburg.
All right, let's go to Nigeria now. The Nigerian army says it has killed more than 50 Boko Haram and ISWAP militants after fierce battles in the country's northern east. The clashes came as insurgents launched coordinated drone and rockets, propelled grenade and attacks on several militant bases in Borno and Yobe states. The army reports that the militants used drones to drop explosives, a growing tactic in the region's insurgency. In response, ground force and air support launched precision strikes, destroying several army positions and recovering a large catch of weapons and ammunition. We talk now to Malik Samuel, who is a researcher at Good Governance Africa. Malik, a very good evening to you and welcome to Channel Africa.
Good evening and thank you for having me.
Yeah, just how significant is this latest military success against Boko Haram and ISWAP in the broader fight against insurgency in northern Nigeria?
I think it's a really big victory and morale booster for the troops, especially if you look at how successful the group over the past months have been against the military. So this particular success, which came immediately after a twin attack on the military bases, shows that the military has the capacity, to take on this group. Now, what it needs to do is to build on this success so that it doesn't become a one-off.
Yeah, and in your view, Samuel, I mean, what does the use of drones by militants tell us about the changing nature of the conflict?
I think you just mentioned it. What it shows is the changing dynamics in the conflict in the region. What it shows as well is that this group are adapting their strategies. Always wanting to be on the front foot. And also it makes it more difficult for the military to contain them. Now, using technology, we've seen different violent extremist groups, not just in Nigeria, but across the Lake Chad Basin and the Sahel. Relying heavily on technology. What it means is that these groups are using tech to reduce the casualties that they have, and also have precision intelligence gathering against a military target. So it's a big concern for not just for Nigeria, but for the Lake Chad Basin region as well.
So, do you believe that the Nigerian military has the intelligence and technological capacity to really counter these evolving tactics?
Without a doubt, the Nigerian military has the reputation of being one of the best in the region, and the Nigerian intelligence agencies, intelligence forces are also very, very good, and they've recorded really good success in the past against the groups. I'm sure you are aware of the leaders of Ansaru that were recently arrested, and the leader of a new terror group called the Mahmuda that were arrested, and these were intelligence-led driven operations. So it shows that the military has the capacity without a doubt, the technology without a doubt, the intelligence and the personnel to really take. So what it just needs is to take the initiative, is to stop being reactive, but rather being proactive against the groups.
Yeah, and someone, wouldn't you agree that this move will, in a way, develop the morale of the Nigerian army amongst communities that are affected in that particular area? I mean, this is, in a way, for a lack of a better term, seen as a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. And in fact, I can confidently tell you that there's been celebration not just amongst the troops, but also amongst the civilian population, because successes like this recorded by the military, reinforces the belief from within the community that the military is capable of protecting them. So it's a really, really big development, of, I would say, big success for not just for the military but also for the civilian population in that region.
Would you say that this would lead to the reduction of the attacks, or it's just a temporary victory?
I would like to believe so, that it will lead to reduced attacks, but unfortunately, what these groups have shown us in the recent past is that they are capable of adapting their strategy. They are capable of they are very, very resilient. So, and this is why I mentioned earlier that the military needs to see this as a morale booster, to take the initiative. Unfortunately, our security forces are rather reactive, to this group. Because if you look at this particular attack, it came after the groups had already attacked and sacked two military bases. So the military needs to stop being reactive, but rather take the fight to this group, to wherever they are hiding. So doing that, if you do that, if they take the fight to the guys, of course, then we can say we hope to see a reduction in the attacks by the groups. But if they wait, if they choose to be reactive, then it's I'm afraid this victory will not result in a reduction of attacks from the group.
Yeah, and Michael, Samuel rather, I know I might be putting you on the spot, but in your view, how much of this ongoing insecurity can be really attributed to political failures, such as poor governance or corruption within the security institutions in the country?
Well, this is not new. We know already that the causes of the conflict that we have in Nigeria, not just in the northeast, not just the Boko Haram crisis, but in the northwest, the banditry, also in the north central. We know that a lot of the root causes are governance issues, like you've just rightly pointed out. The issue of corruption, the issue of marginalization, the issue of people, the justice mechanism system not being applied appropriately, the lack of opportunities for the teaming youth, which makes it easy for these groups to be to recruit. So governance issues really, really are at the root cause of the drivers of this conflict.
Yeah, governance, you're saying it's the root cause. Looking at insecurity in the region, would you say that perhaps, for those people who are saying, hang on, it looks like you're fighting a losing battle, are you fighting a winning battle here?
Well, I think it depends on how you look at it, because this Boko Haram conflict has been on for the past 17 years, and we are still here talking about the same situation. So, like I said, it depends on how you look at it. Some people call it a stalemate. Some people call it a victory for the group, the fact that they've not been defeated by the government. But I always think, yeah, they may be resilient, but we just need, as a government or as a military, to always review the strategies, to review how we approach the group. More importantly, there's a need to prevent the group's ability to recruit, and to do that, you need to address the drivers of recruitment. Why is it easy? Why are people finding themselves in the arms of this group. So these are the issues we need to look at. So if you're able to prevent the group from recruiting, you'll be able to deplete their fighting force, and then possibly we see hopefully an end to the conflict.
Yeah. Someone, let's then look at the government, and maybe if we put a critique on the government, do you think that the federal government is communicating transparently about the human and material costs of these operations? Do you believe that they're transparent?
I think I think to a large extent it's the military or the government has to a large extent been transparent, and this is simply because of the availability of social media. Because the military or the government knows that information will always go out, and so if they lie, and then the citizens find a way to get the right information, of course it puts the government in a bad light. Again, these groups are very, very good with propaganda. They have several social media platforms where they put out information. So it behoves on the government to communicate rightly to the people. Because if it doesn't do that, then it loses the trust of the people. And if it loses the trust of the people, then how good is the government? So I think the government has been forced to actually communicate rightly to the Nigerian population.
Yeah. And do you believe that the upcoming budget in the northern east might be influenced by this continued instability?
Well, I think it won't be surprising that Nigeria accords, I would say, budget a lot to tackle to the defense to defense, and that is simply because the conflict we're having in the country is not just limited to the northeast. There's largely underreported conflict in the northwest of the country, and also in part of the north central of Nigeria. And to some extent, I would say the conflict in the northwest at the moment is even bigger than what you have in the northeast. So it makes sense, if you look at it, that Nigeria will budget more to the security sector. But beyond the budgetary allocation or the budgetary provision, it is also about how this money is expended. How if this money translates into better security for people, if it translates into the defeat of this group, then you can say progress has been made. So I don't think it's only about budgeting money or approving money for defense. And we should be looking more towards the non-kinetic strategy, to complement our kinetic strategy in dealing with this group.
Yeah, and Samuel, just before I let you go, let's talk then about the issues around rehabilitation. How can the government really balance military offensives and rehabilitation of, and reintegration or of repentant insurgents? How do you think the government can balance that in bringing, rehabilitating these people back to the community?
I think the government, to a large extent, has done fairly well in this regard, because if you look at the engagement dynamics, of this conflict, not everybody joined the group willingly, and not everybody joined the group for ideological reasons. Some joined for economic reasons. Some joined because they were conscripted, forced to join. Some joined for protection. And so a lot of people within the groups have indicated willingness to exit the group. So the government has decided to create what it called safe corridor to enable these people who willingly want to exit from the group, to come out. And then when they come out, of course, they have to be rehabilitated and then reintegrated into back into the community. And in doing this, you need to also engage the communities where these people will be reintegrated back into, because these are communities that have been victimized. So if you don't carry the communities along, that it will definitely backfire. And it did at the some years back when the program started. The first set of people that were rehabilitated, some of the communities rejected them because the communities were not aware that they had exited the group and had been rehabilitated. So, and I think the government learned from that and retraced its steps. So going further, it decided to involve communities, community leaders, community members, religious leaders, political leaders at the local level, to be part of this process. So I think it's a good thing that people are willing to come out, and the government is also open to receiving them, because it's also a strategy that depletes further the fighting force of this group.
Yeah, and someone, do we know who's funding these groups?
That's a $1 million question, and I think a lot of people have raised such questions. But the research we have done at GGA has showed that these guys raise money from the communities. Where they are based at the Lake Chad, the Lake Chad Basin area is an economically viable area with a lot of fertile ground for agriculture, and also with massive body of water for fishing. So what this group has done successfully there, is to take advantage with civilians living in these areas. The group taxes the civilians. The group engages in business activities. What it has simply done is to implant itself there as the alternative government there, by providing services and also extorting people, collecting money. So the group raises a lot of money, in fact, in millions of dollars in this area. But of course, we cannot also discountenance whatever support it gets from ISIS. That's the Islamic State. So yeah, but largely the group generates its money from the region, from the areas where it is where it controls.
Malik Samuel, researcher at Good Governance Africa. Thank you so much for indeed making the time.
Thank you for having me.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
All right. The United States has imposed sweeping new sanctions on Russia's two largest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil, accusing Moscow of showing no commitment of ending, or should I say, to ending the war in Ukraine. The move came just a day after plans for a high-level summit between President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin collapsed. These sanctions sparked a wave of a response across Europe, with the EU leaders welcoming the US decision and unwavering their own 19th package of restrictions against Moscow. Botlali Pele reports.
In Washington, President Donald Trump announced a major escalation in sanctions against Russia on Wednesday, October 22nd, with the U.S. Treasury saying the measures target Russia's biggest oil producers, Rosneft and Lukoil, in a bid to cripple Moscow's war funding.
We canceled the meeting with President Putin. It didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it, but we'll do it in the future.
The move marks a significant shift in Trump's approach towards the Kremlin. After months of resisting pressure to target Russia's energy exports, the U.S. says the time for restraint is over. Senior fellow at the Center of Strategic and International Studies, Maria Snegovaya, had this to say.
The Trump administration finally sends a very important signal to other, purchasers, like customers and all sorts of agents who continue to engage with Russia, that there might be serious consequences coming.
But while Trump moved to squeeze Moscow financially, he stopped short of providing Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles, saying Kyiv would need at least 6 months to train for their use. But former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, John Herbst, dismissed that argument.
So I don't have any doubt that if we gave them Tomahawks tomorrow, without any American instructions, they'd figure out within 2 or 3 months how to use them very effectively. So President Trump, took some arguments made by experts who don't really understand Ukraine to justify something he didn't want to do. But having said that, if he really wants Putin to make peace along the lines of his own proposal, he's going to have to put much more pressure on Russia than just what he did today, and Tomahawk should be part of that.
As Washington tightened the screws, Moscow flexed its military muscle, conducting a major nuclear training exercise involving intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching the United States. At the same time, NATO has been carrying out its own nuclear deterrence drills and the growing tension between the world's major powers. Meanwhile, in Brussels, at a Renew Europe pre-summit meeting, European leaders, including President of Renew Europe, Valerie Heyer, and European Commissioner for Enlargement, Martha Koss, welcomed the American sanctions. President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, announced its 19th package of EU sanctions, including a ban on Russian liquefied natural gas imports.
This goes in the right direction. It's the first true decision for sanctions by the United States since the return of Donald Trump. And yes, it is a strong symbol.
I'm very pleased that we have been able to come to the 19th package of the sanction, because we have to put pressure on Russia to come to the peace. At the same time, we have to help Ukraine, and I hope that the leaders will be able soon to come to the decision about the recovery, reconstruction loan.
Today in the morning we approved already the 19th package of sanctions, targeting shadow fleet, banking and energy sector of Russia. And today in this European Council we will take the political decision.
All right, we do apologize for the poor sound there. But on to this story now. The United Nations in South Africa, in partnership with the city of Tshwane, the Pretoria Art Museum, Mosaic Art by Natania and other partners will today commemorate United Nations Day 2025, marking the 80th anniversary of the UN under the global theme UN 80, a legacy of hope, solidarity and action. Celebrated annually on October 24, United Nations Day commemorates the establishment of the United Nations in 1945. This day is of course devoted to promoting global unity, international cooperation and the organization's work in advancing peace, human rights and sustainable development. Ndandla Mahlangu reports.
The celebration highlights 8 decades of the UN's contribution to peace, dignity and equality, while reaffirming the importance of multilateralism, sustainability and collective action in addressing today's global challenges. As part of its 80th anniversary activities, the UN in South Africa and its partners are today hosting a community outreach and environmental stewardship event at the Pretoria Art Museum. UN staff, university students and community volunteers will join for a tree planting and clean up, followed by an artistic showcase unveiling sustainable installations celebrating the UN's legacy of inclusion, creativity and collective action. Nelson Mufu, UN resident coordinator in South Africa, says as the United Nations turns 80, it is a milestone of a celebration, reflection and renewal.
Born from the ashes of war, the UN was founded on a simple but powerful truth. Humanity is stronger when we stand together in the pursuit of peace, shared prosperity, and human rights. The founding vision, We the Peoples, continues to unite the world for a common purpose. For South Africa, the story is deeply personal. The UN stood as a partner in the struggle against apartheid, committed to safeguarding peace and upholding human rights for all. Today, this promise lives on in every partnership, every policy, and every community where the UN is at work, encouraging job creation and inclusive growth, empowering women and youth, strengthening education, food, energy and health systems, tackling inequality and inefficient governance, advancing resilience building and climate action, and supporting South Africa's leadership in Africa and in the world.
UN Day has traditionally been marked throughout the world with meetings, discussions, and exhibits about the achievements and goals of the organization. South Africa is one of the original 51 founding members of the UN, established on the 24th of October in 1945. Today, the organization has grown to 193 member states working together for peace, development, and human rights. There are more than 17 UN agencies working across South Africa alongside government, civil society, and communities. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Tlandla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
Now, South Africa's Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Blade Nzimande, has called for an artificial re-examination of Africa's research priorities and funding models, warning that the continent's scientific agenda remains heavily shaped by external interests. Speaking on Wednesday at the Human Science Research Council and the National Research Foundation Engaged Research Conference, Nzimande cited a 2025 journal article highlighting that although Africa accounts for 14% of the world's population, it contributes less than 1% of global research output. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe has the details.
The conference, which is taking place in Kempton Park, a city in the Eastern region of Gauteng Province, South Africa, is being held under the theme Engaged Research as a pathway to bridging knowledge in society. The conference aims to identify barriers to engaged research and strategies to overcome them, among others, ethics approval structures, promote knowledge exchange on methodologies, approaches and best practices, facilitate networking between academia, community organizations, industry and the government, showcase case studies that demonstrate engaged research's real-world benefits, and consolidate learnings on how engaged research can be applied in different contexts. In his remarks, Minister Nzimande raised concern over Africa's limited contribution to global research.
2025 journal article titled Status of African Research and its Contribution to Global Health Research, a review and an opinion, observes that, and I quote it, although Africa accounts for 14% of the world's population, it produces very little published research, with less than 1% of global research output credited to African scholars.
He challenged African countries, and South Africa in particular, to reflect on who sets the research agenda.
As we place research at the center of Africa's development, we should also concern ourselves with a number of other critical questions. Questions such as, who determines the focus areas for the research that is conducted by a public science institution in Africa? But it doesn't only apply to the rest of the continent. We here in South Africa we must also ask that question, given our own history. To what extent have we deracialized research questions that are being asked by our public research institutions? To what extent have we engendered and gone to eliminate the patriarchal nature of many research questions in our own country and indeed in our continent?
Furthermore, Nzimande said the questions should also scrutinize who funds the researchers and whose interests it ultimately serves. He warned that Africa's dependence on donor funding often results in research that benefits outsiders rather than local communities.
The other question is, who funds the research that is conducted by our public institutions in Africa, and what is the agenda of those funders? Apart from the persistence of the coloniality of knowledge, Africa's research agenda continues, unfortunately, to be donor dependent. And so the donors will ask research questions that in the end benefits them and less the continent. This dependence that I'm talking about continues to present us with such problems such as misalignments between our primary research questions and local needs. And also those projects tend to be short-term in nature. And this huge other challenge we have, which is the loss of intellectual property from the continent and the phenomenon which we call the brain drain, by the way.
Nzimande stressed the urgent need for Africa to develop a sovereign research agenda, highlighting the continent's vulnerability during the COVID-19 pandemic when it was last in line for vaccines. He emphasized that Africa must build its own research capacity and prioritize pandemic preparedness to ensure self-reliance in future health crises.
If there's one thing that should serve as a major mobilizing factor for the development of a sovereign research agenda for Africa, it is our tragic experience at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. We were the worst affected and we were the last in the queue to get vaccines. During this period, we found ourselves in a situation where the lives of millions of people on the African continent were dependent on vaccines and therapeutics from other parts of the world. We should never find ourselves in this precarious situation again. And one of the ways of avoiding this is by developing a sovereign research agenda. Part of a sovereign research agenda for the African continent is that it must at the center place pandemic preparedness, amongst other things.
NRF CEO Professor Fulufelo Nilamondo emphasized that engaged research conducted with communities rather than on them, is essential for meaningful and inclusive scientific progress.
All right, it's that time of the evening where we welcome African Diaries between now and midnight. Shayla, good evening to you. And what have you got in store for us?
Quite a bit is happening in the land of KZN, right? I find it super extraordinary. Firstly, I want to talk about this DJ. His name is DJ Mxeshi Shaw, or rather Mxeshi Mo, who is a visually impaired DJ, and he uses sound as his sight. That for me is remarkable. I want to understand what that means, how it works, the braille involved.
You're talking to him?
Yes, we're speaking to him in the first hour of the show. And we're just going to gauge him on Sixth Sense, right, which is a documentary that is now airing in countries such as Finland, representing South Africa at various festivals. And it speaks to his story, how he's a DJ who's visually impaired. But he believes that through the power of sound, he's able to tangibly feel things. I listen, I had goosebumps when I heard that story. And then we're going to be speaking to, in the second hour of the show, we have an opportunity to speak to Kanyiso Shoba. And what we're going to, in actual fact, not Kanyiso Mshoba, actually, we're going to be speaking to Lindelani Besene, who is a film director, award-winning film director, who's also doing extraordinary things across the continent. So he gets to premiere his film in Kigali at a film festival, and he's been to various other states, various other countries across the continent and the globe at large. And so today is very much about film and how film and storytelling through music and of course through audiovisuals is reaching various places across the continent, and I'm really excited for this.
And how do you see the film industry
at this very stage? Do you really want my honest opinion? So my honest opinion is, I think African stories are blossoming. However, we do fall prey to wanting to sound Western.
Okay.
We do fall prey to the Western gimmick, the Western storyline.
So
hero.
not authentic.
I mean, we're getting there. You know, here's the thing. You can't tell stories that nobody is well acquainted with and expect them to hit the charts, you know. So I do understand the necessity to sort of stay in line and not to stray away from what people usually consume. However, I do see there's certain woods, you know, like Nollywood. I learned that South Africa is called, it moved from Solly to Sallywood, Bollywood, all of these particular woods that we speak of, these film industries, sort of paint similar pictures, but Africans are learning to stray away. What I will say I'm thoroughly impressed by is our cinematography. It has scaled up. It has gone from Purple Lightning, and we shall not mention countries, to it looking aesthetically pleasing on the screen.
Yeah, 4K, 8K.
Come on, why not 16K?
She's with you from now until midnight. Well, that's my lot on tonight's Africa World Hour. From myself, Innocent Semosa, producer Tumelo Zulu, technical producer Tido Macau, and the rest of the Africa World team. Thank you so much for listening. For comments on the show, send us an email at info@channelafrica.org. From myself, Innocent Semosa, and the rest of the team, it's goodbye and God bless.
Africa speaks.